I wanted to build a crib that felt impossible, impossibly held together, yet incredibly easy for my client to assemble. Impossibly minimal, yet incredibly strong and sturdy. One of the things I'm most proud of is that the entire design goes together with a single Allen wrench. Turns out it was almost impossible to build. Now there were 5 core challenges to solve with this crib design. The first was how to seamlessly join the crib using strong invisible connectors. The second was making lots of rungs by hand and staining them black. The third was including a drawer that required no extra hardware to install. The fourth was a custom inlay that honors my client's vision of adoption. And the fifth turned out to be one of the hardest, which was adding an adjustable mattress support without the presence of traditional leg posts. Let's start by discussing seamlessly joining the crib rails using Festool Domino Connectors. Creating invisible joinery that can be easily taken apart and put back together again by a customer isn't exactly easy. Most furniture is permanently held together using solid wood joinery and glue. On the other end of the spectrum is knockdown furniture, widely popularized by IKEA, which is a Swedish word that means fall apart. In my pursuit of building a strong yet easy to assemble crib, I was drawn to the Festool Domino Connector system. Now you may be familiar with the Festool Domino tenons that are wood, but I'm talking about the metal connectors designed for knockdown joinery. These connectors work using 3 key components: an anchor, which lodges into one piece of wood, a bolt that you drive into the anchor, which makes these little wings expand to grip the wood, and a set screw anchored in another piece of wood that pulls the pieces together. Unfortunately, I was pretty disappointed by the DF500 connector set. The anchor that expands to grip the wood just doesn't hold the wood very strong. It's probably fine for low stress environments, but I didn't feel good using it in furniture. Also, the bolt that's used to join everything together is super tiny and surprisingly easy to break off. But I still needed a way to seamlessly join the rails of the crib together, so I did what any sucker would do, and I threw my money at Festool. They have another set of connectors that are way beefier, but unfortunately that meant I needed to buy the Big Daddy Domino XL to cut the bigger mortises for the larger hardware. And it wasn't all roses and sunshine from there. I am expecting a lot from this seamless joint, especially when the crib is in toddler mode, and I could still pull the anchor loose if I tried. I finally figured out a solution where I drilled a hole in a domino and installed it around the anchor. This not only permanently embeds the anchor into the wood, but also adds vertical strength to the joint in addition to the horizontal strength that the connectors naturally provide. I could finally get to work. They actually go together. The part of the project that literally made me want to cry was making a ton of rungs by hand using a router jig on my lathe. I should probably mention at this point in the video that for some crazy reason I decided to make 2 of these cribs at the exact same time. I really loved the design that my client and I arrived at together, and I wanted to make a second version that was slightly simplified. I also wanted to try and sell the second crib to help benefit my client's adoption process. More on that later. What I didn't realize was that making 120 rungs in real life was a lot harder than copying and pasting my Shaper 3D file. The sheer volume of work was literally painful to execute. Anytime I needed to do one thing to a rung, I needed to do that same operation 119 more times. But ultimately, I'm glad I did, because I ended up making a new router jig for my lathe and learned a new process that benefited other parts of the project. A few folks requested plans for this jig, so I made those available on my website, and the link is in the description below. My client wanted storage space on the crib, so I included a drawer underneath the crib that requires no extra assembly to function. Years ago, I saw Ishitani make a drawer that mounted underneath of a table that really inspired my design. This was one part of the project where when I got to work, I was really surprised how different reality was from the 3D model. I originally planned to use this little 1/2" dovetail bit, but when I got it in my hand, it was super tiny, and so I bumped that up to a 9/16" bit. If you use 3D modeling, it will help you a ton, but make sure you test things on real pieces. Speaking of which, the 3D model I used for this build, as well as incredibly detailed 2D drawings, are available on my website. Don't worry if you've never used Shaper 3D, you can use the free version to view the 3D model, and it's extremely simple if all you're doing is viewing a design. And even if you're not building a crib, there are so many parts of this build, like this drawer, that you can incorporate into other projects. We did a special inlay on the crib that combined ash, sapele, and steel to create an adoption-inspired design. My client is in the adoption process, and one of the more interesting and challenging parts of their design brief was that they wanted something that looked as if different types of woods were grafted together on the crib to represent how their lives will intertwine with their child. Sadly, the adoption my client was hoping for fell through midway through this project. But Ryan and Tammy, having personally experienced this grief together when we were adopting our first child, I want to tell you that your suffering, even though it's so painful, will produce endurance, and endurance character, and that character will produce hope. I pray that God's love will be poured into you and that there will be a child sleeping in this crib soon.
Even though this feels impossible, don't give up.
Alright, after that, I gotta talk about something dry and technical, like adding an adjustable mattress support system to the crib. In my opinion, any good crib includes adjustable heights, because for most of the first year, they're in what my brother calls the potted plant stage. They're not going anywhere. This feature appears simple, but was surprisingly difficult to pull off. I didn't have much material to work with, and my first few approaches didn't cut it. My initial approach used traditional shelf pins to hold up the mattress support, because I loved how simple it would be to pop them in and out when you needed to convert the crib. But when I dug through the ASTM crib safety standards, I read that the support system needs to be fastened to the crib. This led me to trying to use a threaded insert and a bolt that fastened a bracket to the rung. The problem I ran into at this point was that the bolt size wasn't strong enough once I incorporated the threaded insert. Finally, I discovered these things called helicoil inserts, which are more minimal, allowing me to use a much sturdier bolt to hold up the mattress support, and they performed super well under testing. Now the scary part was that I had to install these inserts after the cribs were completely finished to ensure correct alignment, and I practiced a lot before drilling holes in the crib. If you like this crib design, I have an exciting announcement for what I'm doing with the second crib that I built in my next video. And in the meantime, if you want to support my client in their adoption journey, please see their adoption page in the link below.